Okay, so how much grammar do we need when we learn German? Most of what I will say, by the way, is true for any language. Actually, we need way less grammar in the beginning of learning a language, or German in particularly, than we may think. And I can prove it. So a native speaker has learned their own native language pretty well before they go to school. So they start school at 5 or 6, and after that they learn grammar. Because I'm very sure that you did not learn your language with your mom picking you up when you were like 2 years old and saying, okay, little Johnny or little Mary or whatever your name is. Yesterday we learned nouns. So by the way, what is the definition of a noun? And the child would probably run away at this point. I'm sure that that's not the way how you learn your own language. We can learn a language without actually learning so many grammar rules.
All right.
What do we do instead of learning big grammar rules? The first thing is we need to learn words. We need to learn the words. There's actually a whole article and video I have about how to learn words properly. I'm not saying we don't learn anything before we learn the words, but just focus on learning words. You need about 5,000 words to get along in any language and cover about 75-80% of the day-to-day language. And then in my course, we use sentence pattern. A sentence pattern is basically a sentence with a blank. So, for example, this is a blank. And then I tell you, okay, which words can you put in this blank? Then you know, you can say, this is a lamp, this is a table, this is a floor, this is a chair, this is a picture. And by using that, you can immediately say at least, 20 sentences correctly. So, if you have someone who speaks the language and your language, they can help you work that out. Or you can even use a translation tool and translate very simple sentences and see what's the same in your own language and in German. And work with that. And other than that, if you do not have a course or a person that can help you with that, I suggest you to more focus on things like watching movies with subtitles. Or reading, for example, you can use a parallel text. A parallel text is a book or a text that gives the same text in German and your native language. You probably can even use a translation tool for a text that you have and work out patterns, sentence patterns. Start with easy ones yourself and practice those. Of course, again, if you'd learn it with me, we have these sentence patterns and we have put the whole grammar into these sentence patterns, so you don't have to learn grammar rules, but you learn a sentence pattern, and then you practice the sentence pattern until you can really use it and don't have to think about it, and then the next one, and then the next one. You will not learn German silently and then after 2 years suddenly speak in perfect sentences. So how you learn is you say it, you start saying simple sentences with probably bad pronunciation and making some mistakes, and then you will become better and better and better. But I can give you an example. When you have a son or a daughter and they try to say a sentence for the first time, because they start out by using singular words. A kid, when they start speaking a language, they will probably say something like tree. And maybe they will say tree to anything, to a lamp, to a pole, tree, tree, tree. And then they will figure out what is really a tree. And then they will say tree to trees. And you will be very happy about the progress they make. And then maybe they learn dog. And then they say dog to the cat and then to the dog. And then finally they say dog to the dogs. So they've learned what a dog is. And then maybe they will for the first time attempt a sentence. And they will say dog barking. And you will be, yes, which dog, which dog? You will not go and say, no, you have to say that dog is barking. Or you have to say a dog is barking, because that is a difference. No, you will be, dog barking. My kid is a genius. He said a sentence or something like that. Anyway, that doesn't matter if you think he's a genius, but that is a sentence. It's the first sentence and it's not perfect, and it will become better and better and better. But if you expect that you are being corrected on every mistake you ever make, or maybe you don't expect it, but it just happens to you, what will happen is you will start saying, it's already difficult because, first of all, you have to think of what you're saying, and then you have to do it in another language, and then you will put things together, and maybe you will say something like, Tag schön, and then somebody will tell you, no, you have to say, der Tag ist schön, and so on. And what it will cause, or what it will do, is it will make you look inside. It will introvert you. And it can make you not speak freely. And that is not a good thing. And it's not a good thing for anything. I mean, if you become more introverted when you learn something, too much overcorrection is not a good thing. And I don't know, this seems to be happening even more in German-speaking areas than it is happening, for example, in English-speaking areas. Maybe it's just what I've seen, but I know that it can hurt. It can make people not want to speak, and that's what they should actually learn. And another thing, I've seen that using too much grammar in the beginning in a course can actually cause the opposite of what it should be. Because if you use too many grammar rules right in the beginning of a course, the person, first of all, it can happen. Many people are not super 100% perfect about grammar even in their own language. So if I tell you in a complicated sentence with 3 foreign words how to make a German correct sentence, even if you maybe sort of understand what is meant, it will not get you to the point where you can actually apply this. So in the beginning, you need much less grammar, much less theory, and much more practice. And then, after and only after you've learned enough German or any other language that you can say sentences, you can understand the basic language, then you start worrying. You should never worry, but then you start dealing with grammar and learning more grammar and making your sentences better and more correct. I'm not saying that grammar is unnecessary. I'm not saying we don't need grammar. I think some people in my environment, some students will testify that I have not, I've tortured them with grammar. No, I don't think so. It is very important. You will only get to a certain level of German, and I want and encourage all of my students to become very good at what they learn and to get to a very good level of German. If they want to, it is entirely possible. And then after a certain level, they need to learn grammar and they need to learn it properly. But they may have to find that they have to also learn the grammar of their own language, of their native language at that point in time. It's possible that that happens. So maybe you have become desperate about learning German or understanding the German grammar. So I'm telling you, it's entirely possible to both learn German and to understand German grammar. You don't need to be a genius to do that. It's not so hard. If you have the correct approach, if you have the correct course, if you have a method for you that works. However, if you are maybe at the situation that you think it's super difficult, first of all, let me tell you, do not give up. You will be able to succeed. You can do it. But maybe you have to consider finding a course that works better for you or finding a method that works better for you. Because it's very possible that you are at a stage where you need less grammar and more practice and more vocabulary and more working it out and working on conversation than actually learning theoretical rules. Yes, so don't give up and know and understand that if you get confused and desperate about grammar, it's probably not your fault. It's probably that you haven't been taught right, and you need to fix that.